Hello everyone. Welcome to my presentation, Liar, Liar, Plot on Fire. A study of, well, you know them, you love them, unreliable narrators. These are my academic information, and this is my research question. How do unreliable narrators in The Only Story, The Great Gatsby, The Sense of an Ending, and The Remains of the Day manipulate memory, perception, and truth? And what effect does this have on the reader's interpretation of reality? My hypothesis for this presentation is that unreliable narrators in these novels manipulate memory and personal biases to present a distorted version of events, compare and uncover hidden truth. The narrative technique not only adds psychological depth to the character, but also emphasizes the elusive nature of objective reality. Let me first introduce you to the unreliable narrator. An unreliable narrator is basically somebody whose credibility is compromised. So, you as a reader are unsure whether their version of events is true or not. They make you question their events. This term was coined by Wayne C. Booth in 1961, and he introduces it like this: I have called a narrator reliable when he speaks for or acts in accordance with the norms of the work, which is to say, the implied author's norms, unreliable when he does not. So, here there is this question of implied author as well, that why an author has written this text, and what is the philosophy of author, what the ideas the author wants to convey, and does the narrator align with them or not. And that is Wayne C. Booth's definition. After that, there has been a lot of debate on this. Here I have taken Zervak's article, and in that he presents these 4 key characteristics of unreliable narrator. That it is the unreliable narrator is a very human-like figure, because it is very natural to rely on your memory, and it is very natural for your memory to be biased towards yourself. The unreliable narrator, they unknowingly reveal their own reliability. So this happens unknowingly, they are not sure, but they make one mistake or 2 3 such sentences that makes you think that maybe they are not reliable. Unreliable changes based on societal values and literary norms. Now, this is something Zervak argues, that if you see olden works, so when they were written, the narrators were not considered unreliable. Now that we see them through modern lens, we see that they may have been unreliable. There is also the question of reader's interpretation, and for this, Zervak actually gives the example of Midnight's Children. He says that if Midnight's Children is read by somebody from the West, then they would question Salim as an unreliable narrator. But this would not happen in India, because we are accustomed to this type of storytelling where somebody is all messed up, but because of our wide mythological background, we are aware of that, and we are quite accepting of that also. Let me give you a brief historical overview of unreliable narrators. So the birth of unreliable narrator can be traced in 18th century, because that was the time for realistic novels, and so they were more diverting their attention towards objective storytelling rather than subjective one. In 19th century, we see limited use of unreliable narration, but we see it in Gothic literature. So we have Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So these works like that, works in that genre used unreliable narration, but it was not in the mainstream. In the early 20th century, or modernism as we call it, we see the rise of epistemological skepticism. There is the question of whether the things you know are correct or not, whether your knowledge is reliable or not. And because of that, we see in postmodernism, in the mid 20th century to present, unreliability stops being like this out of the box thing, and it becomes a very regular thing in postmodernist novels, because they accept that human beings are unreliable. And the first character that we are going to analyze as an unreliable narrator is Paul Roberts from The Only Story. This is the basic information about that. So as you all know that it is about Paul. He's an old man now, and he's thinking back to his affair with Susan. So Paul doubts his own memory. Why do we say that he's an unreliable narrator? So number one reason to it and changes it. He makes some kind of editing to it. So here I have presented one quote. Do all these retelling bring you closer to the truth of what happened, or move you further away? I'm not sure. So he's not sure of his own narration or whether his narration is true or not. Then there is the question of inconsistent chronology, because Paul does this, that he says something and then he goes that, okay, but this event happened before that, that event happened after that. This is actually a technique of confusing the reader, we can say, because then you are thinking that, okay, how did it happen? You are thinking about the chronology of the sequence, and in that he may have hidden something. So here is an example of that also, that not this is from the novel. He says this, that he's starting to say something, and he says that, and this would have happened earlier, but I'm only remembering it now. Then there is also the shifting narrative perspective. We see that Paul did this, that he started the novel with first person narration and then he moved on to second and third. So we can argue that he is making a distance between himself and his narration, between his story and his narration. There is also self-preservation and rosy retrospection. So there is no doubt that Paul sees himself, or his past at least, in these rose-colored glasses. He likes to think of things that were more happy, more cheerful than they actually were. And here is the quote for that, that he says that you remembered your past event in cheerful terms because this validated your existence. And he says that still an optimistic memory might make it easier to part from life, might soften the pain of extinction. So he says he accepts this as well, that it is okay for memory to be biased towards oneself. And at last, there is also the paradox of the only story. Now, here in the article, we find that there is this paradox given by the author, that Paul starts by saying that this is the only story worth telling, this is the only story that matters. But in the end, he's not quite sure of his own narration. He is not sure of the way the things happened, or whether he is narrating them in truth or not. So we see here the paradox of only story, that is it actually just one story? Of an ending. This is another work of Julian Barnes. It is also quite similar, because Tony Webster is also a retired man. He's looking back at his past. But one thing that happens here is that he gets a secret diary of his friend. And because of that, there is a clash between how the events he remembered and how they are recorded in that diary. So he is made to confront his own perception. So Tony also questions his own memories. He starts by saying that what you end up remembering isn't always the same as what you have witnessed. So he's accepting that memory is changeable. And he says he accepts this fault of his memory. He says that if I can't be sure of the actual events anymore, I can at least be true to the impression those facts left. That's the best I can manage. There is also inconsistency and contradictory memory of Tony Webster as well, because he also has this mistake of chronology. He does not remember the things in a particular order. There is also omission or editing of key information. Now, this is something unreliable narrators do very often, where they miss the key facts or key information. They left them out intentionally to portray themselves as a hero. One example that comes to mind is Kazuo Ishiguro's An Artist of the Floating World, where the protagonist did this again and again, where he would omit the things that would make him, that would portray him in the bad light. There is also the self-serving nature of memory of Tony Webster. He accepts this as well, that I have an instinct for survival, for self-preservation. Perhaps this is what Veronica called cowardice, and I called being peaceful. So we see that he's accepting this also, that yes, my memory serves me only. He talks about how he uses memory for self-preservation. He has a strong survival instinct, and because of that, he would do certain things that we might not consider moral or correct. There is also he is unable to achieve closure. Now, this is a very important factor, because in the novel is titled The Sense of an Ending. But at the end, Tony is only filled with this great unrest. He found out after reading the diary, like the fact written down in the documentation clashes with his own memories, and he is not able to understand this. He's not able to make his peace with it. And when he finds out that his memory is actually unreliable, there is great unrest in him. So in the end, he is not able to achieve a closure or a peaceful mindset. In fact, he is deeply stirred by everything. Another famous unreliable narrator is Nick Carraway from The Great Gatsby. Nick is, from my presentation, Nick is the only unreliable narrator who is not actually the protagonist of his story, but a side character. Nick also has this contradiction in his self-perception. He begins the novel by saying that I'm inclined to reserve all judgments, that I will not judge people. But time and again, he starts judging people, namely, there is also moral inconsistencies, because when Nick Carraway finds out about Tom's affair with Myrtle, he deeply criticizes him. He says that it is wrong, and he shows this moral front. But when Gatsby wants to get together with Daisy, Nick helps him. So isn't that inconsistent? And so we see his moral inconsistency. We see compromises and hypocrisy of Nick Carraway as well. Many times he compromises this. We see because of the affair of Tom Buchanan, he's deeply criticizing him. Daisy, on the other hand, killed Myrtle, although it was an accident, but she ended up killing somebody. And still, Nick didn't say anything about that. In fact, he maintained his silence in front of the authorities as well. So he helped in that crime. There is also a distorted view of Gatsby and American Dream. We know this after reading the novel, that he thinks Gatsby is some great man. But how can we forget that he's actually a bootlegger? All the wealth that he boasts of, that is made from wrongful means. So we see a distorted view of Gatsby, and there is a distorted view of American Dream as well. American Dream is basically that anybody can find success in America. And Nick tries to portray himself as such. In the ending, he gives this quote that, so we beat on, boats against current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. So he goes on to say, ends on a very hopeful note, and he says that I will do all the things necessary to achieve, like we should all do the things to be better from our past. We should do this. And in this manner, he tries to portray himself as a normal person. But that is not actually true, because he himself is also quite wealthy. He comes from wealth. He does not have to think of his next meal like the other minor characters in the novel. And there is also this question of emotional bias towards Daisy, that I already gave you the example of how he is biased towards Daisy. He ignores her crimes actually. And he says, in the very first time he met Daisy, he said this, that it was the kind of voice that the ear follows up and down, as if each speech is an arrangement of notes that will never be played again. So from this line, we can see the fascination he has towards Daisy. So we can say there is Nick Carraway is biased towards Gatsby and Daisy, both of them. The last narrator that I'm going to talk about is Stevens from Kazuo Ishiguro's The Remains of the Day. He is actually a butler, and he is going to a road trip. And in that road trip, he's thinking about everything. He actually got a letter from his former housekeeper, Miss Kenton. And Miss Kenton is right now married. So he gets that letter, and he thinks that maybe she's an unhappy marriage, and maybe I should go there and give her this employment back. So we see Stevens is an unreliable narrator because of his psychological repression. So Stephen tries to be this proper butler. Again and again, he stops his emotions. He represses himself from feeling anything, from saying the truth, from behaving a certain way. And because of this psychological repression, we can see that he is quite unreliable, because we don't know what he truly feels about things. There is also his verbal patterns and self-deception that look at this quote. He is talking about his father here, that I realize that if one looks at the matter objectively, one has to concede that my father lacked various attributes one may normally expect in a great butler. So here he is talking about his own father in such a distant manner. So he has distanced himself from all of them. And he also, we see these type of verbal patterns. He is, of course, deeply wounded by this, but he refuses to grieve him. He refuses himself any sort of emotion. It's a self-deception that I don't really care. I'm a butler. I should not show these kind of emotions. So we see self-deception. There is also the conflict between scene and commentary. So this happens that he's the narrator. So he says something, and when it is time to act, he goes around and does something entirely different. So we see this in when Miss Kenton's aunt dies. So he's very sympathetic towards her. He's thinking that I should comfort her if she's grieving and everything. But in the very next scene, he goes around and criticizes her for work not well done. There is also need for justification and defensiveness. We see that he makes a lot of justifications for himself, and he becomes defensive for a long time. He says, let me make perfectly clear, let me make it immediately clear, I should clear this out, through statement like these. There is also Stephen's late realization At the end of the novel, we have this realization. He realizes the unreliability of his memory, or how his own perception was flawed from the beginning. And here he, in the last, he gives this quote that I'm inclined to believe I may well have read more into certain of her lines than perhaps was wise. Here he is talking about the housekeeper's letter, because of which he traveled the entire journey. And at the end, he's thinking that maybe she's not in an unhappy marriage. Maybe she was just remembering the past. So he accepts this realizations. So conclusion from all of these unreliable narrator, we see that memory is basically an unreliable tool. We cannot of emotional bias in characters as well as in the people we meet in our lives. And but these unreliable narrators force us to have an active role as a reader, because we are forced to see what they are omitting, where they are being silent, what they are hiding. So this puts us in a very active role. Otherwise, we would just be listening to a story. So to conclude, I would say that despite their differences, these works collectively highlight a crucial idea that truth is really objective, and personal experiences inevitably shape how stories are told and remembered. They add psychological depth to the character while challenging readers to confront the unsettling notion that truth is often elusive and subjective. My learning outcome from this presentation was that it made me question that whether there is any storyteller that can ever be truly objective. So no matter the storyteller who is telling the official stories, like the authors in our books, or like the friends we meet in our lives, the people we deal with daily. So can we really believe them, their perception, their memories, and their version of stories? These are my references, and thank you. Now for your questions.
My question is, Muiba, among all the unreliable narrators you have studied, which one do you find the most compelling in making themselves an unreliable narrator?
The most compelling in making themselves an unreliable narrator, I think that would be Stevens, after studying about the remains of the day, because he is totally convinced. See him doubt, he just omits that. This is something that Kazuo Ishiguro's characters does often, because he has explored unreliable narrator in The Artist of the Floating World and Never Let Me Go as well. So all of his unreliable narrators do this, that they are very human, and they would say it so convincingly that it takes you a moment to question whether they are unreliable narrators or not.
Bhumi, my question is for you. Does reading an unreliable narrator makes you question the people around you? And what would be the more interesting way to experience unreliable narrator, movies or novels?
I would be saying novels, because I am quite biased towards them, because an unreliable narrator in novel is always more interesting. As for questioning the people around me, not only the people and it makes me question that whether I'm being an unreliable narrator to myself right now whenever I'm remembering anything. So yeah, I would say it has had a deep impact. And but there is also downside that now I will never trust anybody, I feel. And thank you.